welcome to Gear Up with BigIron.
If we ever have your sale, we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure it's the best sale we ever had.
Hey everybody, Gear Up with BigIron, and today we're going to get ready for fall harvest and ready for winter. So we've got some great conversation. We're going to talk about machinery, getting your land ready, all kinds of good stuff, whether you're selling it or not. So we have a special guest. Miles Boatman is here along with Ron Stock. And we're going to be having all kinds of good, interesting discussion. And one thing that Miles Boatman does with his team, when somebody calls us up, they want to sell an item or a complete retirement sale or an estate sale, he'll go in and get everything ready, from the power washing to putting in batteries and blowing up the tires and whatever other essential things need to be done in order for that sale to take place. But we thought, instead of talking about stuff that's going to be sold right away, what if you're going to farm next year and the year after that, but you want to help maintain that machinery's value? So, topic of discussion, Mr. Miles Boatman. Let's start with, we're coming around fourth crop hay cutting in a lot of the Midwest now is about getting ready to get underway to finish up. What should they be doing to a round baler or a windrower, self-propelled windrower, to keep that thing in excellent condition?
You know, Mark, it's always a good idea to blow off your machinery before you park it before winter. Everybody thinks we'll get around to it during the winter. Time gets away from us, and the next thing you know, we're back into spring. So I always like to blow my baler off before the end of the year, and that way I know what I need to look at for the year and what repairs I do need to use before the winter gets gone.
I noticed you said blow it off, like a big air compressor with a wand. But a lot of times when you go out and wash somebody's machinery, he'll tell you, please don't wash my bearings on my combine. Please don't wash my bearings. That's an instinct farmers have. Don't use water, just use air, correct? When should you use air and when should you use water?
So on my baler, we would run all summer long, unless we have to have repairs, we'd wash it during the summer. When it comes down to fall and it's going to be setting after we bale our corn stalks and things are getting ready for winter, I don't like water sitting in my bearings all winter long. So we use air to blow it off, or even just a leaf blower.
I've had some farmers, they'll wash it off, but then they'll engage it and let it run a little bit, or else they'll wash it before they make the last bale. And then they go out and make that last bale and get all that water out of the bearings. But Miles, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, where you're from and what you've been doing the last 20 years of your life.
So I live over towards Des Moines, Iowa, not about 40 miles northwest of Des Moines. I've been an equipment dealership for 4 or 5 years. I was in the feed dealership, and I've got a significant background in cattle feeding and cow-calf operation both. Been with BigIron for 6 years, 4 years doing this current job. I enjoy every minute of it. Our group, there's about 12 of us that go across the country and do everything. Anywhere from big national account stuff all the way down to the local farmer.
So tell about that. I mean, you put on miles.
A couple years ago in January, I was at both borders on both coasts twice in the month of January.
So the way I understand it, when we get a listing on the coast and we don't have a sales rep there, you're one of our go-to guys that shows up and takes the pictures and takes the videos and explains the process to the seller. So what I'm proud of is when we have an area where we don't have representation, where BigIron is not yet, not only do we send in someone that's just send in anybody, but we send in professionals who have been listing machinery, because your first 2 years, you were a BigIron rep. You took the pictures, you took the videos. I remember you walking across the stage your first 2 years with some of the top sales awards. So you were very successful. Why did you decide to get out of sales and go into sales setup and, listing the machinery?
So part of the reason I decided to do that was to actually do the travel. I mean, I really wanted to travel. I was kind of in a free minute in my life to where I could move around and go do some things.
See the country.
Yeah, see the country and, and see what all we can do and, promote BigIron from coast to coast.
As BigIron grows, we're looking for more and more sales setup help. When Ron and Mark used to line up the sales setup help, we used to find them from guys that had sales that said, they're 60 some years old. What am I going to do? 50 some years old. What am I going to do? We said, well, you want to set up sales for us? And you train a lot of those people for us, don't you?
Yeah, I've trained a lot. I couldn't count how many people I've trained through this door.
So what's the perfect candidate for that type of a job?
Somebody with a lot of drive. Yeah, wants to meet people, wants to get to know people, wants to build that relationship. And proceed. I mean, I've got relationships with major CEOs in the country, the United States, and I've got a really good relationship with a guy with 15 pieces of equipment that wanted to sell it.
Well, I know that in our business, it has always been the people that have set up the sales, cleaned the equipment, lined everything up. They are still on the Christmas card list for the sellers that they've worked for, because you're there. You're at people's sites sometimes for weeks getting ready for their auctions. And they appreciate that.
Can I expound on that a little bit while we got on that tangent? But there's been so many times where we got done with the sale. You've had it happen to you. I've had it happen to me. This was when we were doing traditional auctions. They would sit us down and say, I appreciate you guys help me with the sale, call the bid, managing out the money and all that stuff, doing all the back stuff, advertising. But I didn't hire you, Mark Stock, because you're Mark Stock. He goes, I hired the setup guys, and they got all the hugs when it was over. When the sale's over, I'm just expounding on the point that they love the sales setup guy, because you're the one that spends the time with them. You're the one where the guy's standing out there in a walker, standing out the deal going, over there, you missed a spot. He's having the best day he's had in 10 years because he's not able to do it. So thank you for doing that. That's a big job.
One of the favorite things that I've had going is, helping a guy through his final steps of, selling off his equipment, listening to his story, listening to him to tell us about it, and, then taking utmost care of it.
Anyway, warming stuff up before you use it this fall. Are you a fan of letting your engine idle before you pour the cobs to it?
Oh, yeah. No, we always start everything at an idle. We always, before our setup crew starts off, we always check the oil in the antifreeze and make sure it has plenty of hydraulic oil. And then we always start it up and just let it idle. Let it set at idle, and then when you take off and then hydro in the combine, you just don't slam it as hard as you can forward. You just ease it forward, and that doesn't matter whether that's new equipment or old equipment, either one.
Why is that important, that you let it idle?
Well, it gets everything kind of loosened up and kind of things pumping and kind of going. And, and to me, it's utmost respect to the piece of equipment and to the farmer that is possibly selling.
What's operating condition? If it's a little cold outside and you got that oil, it's a little heavier, you can't put that money through a hydro or through a transmission full bore right away because it's a heavier viscosity.
If you're mechanically minded, you always let your machinery warm up before you start it. I find myself doing it with my cars and my pickups. So when I leave, in particular in the wintertime, I just kind of idle going out my driveway till I get up, see the temperature gauge move, and then I take off. It's just a farmer mentality.
So sprayers, people will be done spraying, okay? And what's an important thing to be doing with their sprayer?
Well, I mean, either way, if you're done with your sprayer, I would go ahead and, I don't own a sprayer, but I would go ahead and winterize it.
How do you winterize a sprayer?
Well, we always, guys that I've worked with, we've always run some water through it and let it clean out all the chemical out of it. And then we always go get those nice old 55-gallon drums of antifreeze and dump in the sprayer tank.
Does the blue windshield wiper antifreeze work?
Not so much.
Why not?
Because that wind chill really gets to that big pieces of equipment. I would use RV antifreeze. I know some other guys that use the green stuff, but...
Well, I know some of the shops, they usually sell that green stuff, and you only have to put a couple gallons in if you do sections at a time.
Yep.
Once you see it coming, you can shut it off.
Yep.
And you're good to go. At least that's what I've been told.
I would run that antifreeze through there and get it completely through the whole system, and then just leave some of it in the tank.
What about rodents?
Rodents, yeah, that's another big deal. Make sure your equipment's cleaned off. I mean, if there's, every once in a while there's a corn stalk or corn kernels or beans get up there on the sprayer when they're running down through and stuff, that, that's a attractant for rodents. And then I would use the rodent repellent packs that we use.
I can't stand the smell of that stuff.
I don't either, but it does work.
I don't like it.
Well, cinnamon is supposed to be dryer sheets.
I'll use dryer sheets. That doesn't stink as bad as those rodent packs.
So we got rodents, we got sprayers, and then we got the harvesting machines. I know your corn heads, real fancy corn heads right now, they got so many sensors on them and so many wires. And mice are damaged to those things as well, I take.
Yeah, they are. Mice are damaged about anything. Once again, I would just blow it off. I wouldn't use water to wash it. I just blow it off really good, whether it's an air compressor, a leaf blower, whatever, and get any of the excess kernels of anything out of there, kernels or beans or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Now, pre-harvest, so we're talking about sprayers. We're done with sprayers. Now, pre-harvest, and you got your combine. If you didn't take it to your dealer to have the big old service checklist done, what's the most important thing people should be doing to their combines right now?
Boy, grease. I mean, we're back to that grease deal. I was young when we had a first combine fire that on our farm. My grandpa's combine caught on fire. He drove it all the way to the house, burning out the back end. And, we owned a section, and he drove all the way across it. And
parked it in the garage?
No, he left it out in the middle of the barn lot. But still, we got water on it. But, and my grandpa was religious about grease, but there was just a bearing that went bad. So that's no fault of his, but there is bearings that go bad, but grease is an important thing.
We want to thank Miles for stopping by and visiting with us this morning, just giving us some good, simple tips and some tips maybe you never even thought of about keeping your equipment in good care, because we know most people use their machines year after year after year, and some people trade them year or every other year or every other year. But maintenance is still one of the best ways you can maintain its value and, of course, have the least amount of breakdowns. So thank you very much, Miles. If you're looking for a career in traveling the world and meeting a lot of people, you'll be working with Miles Boatman, setting up some auctions all across North America for BigIron and Sullivan Auctioneers. Thank you very much, Miles. All right, we're going to come back right after this commercial break.
At BigIron Auctions, customer satisfaction is our #1 goal. As the 40-year leader in auctions for agriculture, real estate, livestock, construction, and transportation, we are here to serve you. BigIron will handle everything from start to finish. From meeting with you, to prepping your equipment, writing the listings, and collecting buyer's payments, let us do the heavy lifting for you. We love our customers, and we treat them like family. There's a BigIron sales rep in your area, so let's get together. To learn more, visit BigIron.com.
And we are back here. We're Gear Up with BigIron and Ron Stock and myself, Mark Stock, here, just talking about getting ready for the winter season. We want to thank Miles Boatman for all of his insight and letting us know about what he does and how you should get your equipment ready. And we're going to mention a little bit about some of the farmland, Ron Stock. And as a lot of people like to put on some fertilizer in the fall, a lot of people like to do some cover crops in the fall. A lot of folks have irrigation systems. They need to make sure that stuff has been maintained, making sure your pivot actually drained. So what are some of your thoughts and some of your recommendations in those areas?
Well, we manage farms for people. I know Mark does some farm management. I do some farm management. But basically, this time of year, we're getting geared up for spraying our pastures in the fall. Most people spray their pastures in the spring, but you should actually spray them twice in the fall, right as the ground's freezing. That thistle that made it through the season, that thistle turns into a green, looks like a big green lily pad, bunch of leaves, and that needs to be sprayed in the fall, and that needs to be sprayed in the spring. When you spray the thistles when they're this tall and they're starting to bud, I mean, you've already missed the boat. Just forget about it. Actually make the county happy and spray them, but they got a lot of weed seed that's going to make it through the next season. So really need to get your thistle sprayed and start planning on it now.
Now, my mother lives in town, and her next door neighbor, Ron, had a big old musk thistle growing in her flower garden because she thinks they're just a beautiful flower.
They're pretty.
Yeah, they're pretty, and my mom had to go over and say, that's a noxious weed.
Yeah, I mean, we get letters from the county saying you got to spray your weeds. If you're managing a farm, you got to take care of it.
So if you've never seen what a musk thistle looks like, Google it when you get home. Musk thistle, or what's another word for them? The Russian thistles?
Thistle, yeah.
Thistle.
There's lots of different
And you'll
thistles.
see how they look pretty, but don't grow them, folks. They are nasty weeds. They have thousands and thousands of seeds, and they are hard to kill because they grow off. I think they'll grow on concrete.
Yes. I'm managing a farm in South Dakota that was solid musk thistles for like 5 years till I took over the management. And I'm telling you, we finally got them kind of halfway under control, but they're starting to come back again. They just come back and back and back. So thistles are huge.
2,4-D will kill a musk thistle. Now, 2,4-D won't kill leafy spurge. That takes a different type of stuff. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a chemical guy at all. Just talk to your local agronomist and your chemical rep to get all the right stuff, because different geographic areas take different chemistry.
So let's talk about center pivots. Here in eastern Nebraska, we're thick with center pivots, but a lot of people, they checked, they gearboxes in the water in the spring. You should really do it in the fall. But the fall is such a busy time because when that water freezes inside that gearbox, it can't be good. But there's usually a little water on the bottom because oil floats, and you go out there in the spring and take the plug off and you drain the water out.
Do it
and
in
you
the
top
fall,
it
it'll
off.
drain.
Yeah, do it in the fall, but everybody does it in the spring. It's better to do it in the fall. And put your pivot in the right direction of the wind. Like, there's lots of different farmers have different theories, but when you leave your pivot and you're not going to start it up, you should put it into the prevalent wind so it doesn't blow over in a blizzard, because it happens. Big blizzard comes over, blows the pivot over. So I think a guy should line up his pivots to the south, west, or to the northeast for fall.
And we've got a lot of folks that are listening here that feed us with livestock. And their season is really just starting to get up, especially for the cow-calf guy, and the feedlots are getting full again. So that's a ongoing, never-ending chore, is when you're tending to livestock. Because whether you're running a dairy barn or you've got your cow-calf or you got your feedlots full, hats off to the guys and gals that are out there when the days are nice, but they're out there when the days are nasty. And it takes a special kind of person and a love to be out there dealing with livestock year in and year out. So thank you, producers, for that. I know a lot of folks, they like to take their cows on corn stalks and put up the old electric wire. And I always like to tell people, if you think you're going to put cows out on stalks, go pound those posts in and hang that wire early on, because even if the cows ain't going to be there for a month or two, it's very hard to pound a post in frozen ground. So depending on what geographic area you're at, go out there and get that wire spooled out.
Particularly the posts in. A lot of guys just put the posts in and do the wire later.
Yeah, but you got to make sure your insulators are on the post, folks. Otherwise, you're not going to find the posts. And now you're going to have an $1,800 tire damage in the spring when you run over that sucker and it goes right through the
Sounds
tire.
like experience.
No, I might be having
Let's talk a little bit about
we
the
change
cows.
the subject. Isn't it a beautiful day out?
Talk a little bit about the cows. You know, it's important to keep your livestock in condition. And, you know, Mark and I have cow-calf pairs, and people always ask me, why in the hell do you have cows, Ron? Well, I just wanted to keep my hands in it so I understand livestock, because I knew someday we would sell livestock. I always felt like that was our vision. And so, you know, I've learned a lot about it. Our dad didn't have livestock. He said, instead of us raising livestock, we're going to raise hay and sell it to the livestock producer. But my uncle had livestock. And so basically, when Mark and I bought our first farm back in our early 20s, there was about 80 acres of pasture on it. And so we had to buy some cows. So our dad's like, just rent it to somebody. Don't get any cows. Anyway, we got the cows.
We bought some cows.
And unfortunately, we made some money on those cows the first time. You know,
and then we bought more cows.
Sold them high. So we bought more cows. But it's important when you have your cows that you keep them in condition. And, you know, to do that, like even coming off pastures, when the grass gets low and you don't have the corn stalks ready for them, you got to be giving them some grain or some protein lick tubs so they're not so thin. You know, a cow can handle a lot of bad winter. As long as it goes into the winter in good condition, it can handle a lot of cold. I mean, how many times you're out there and you see the cows with the snow on their back about 2 inches deep in the morning? It didn't even melt overnight. That's because their hides are so thick. So folks that don't know anything about livestock, don't feel sorry for them. They like being outside when it's cold. Don't feel sorry for them when it's cold. They like being outside. When I was early on to the cow-calf business, when I first got married, I thought about building a building, and I was going to put them in there, a building that wasn't too tall, put the whole herd in there when the blizzard set in, and all the neighbors told me that new livestock, they said, don't do that. They get inside there, they get pneumonia, that steam, a lot of moisture. He goes, just leave them outside.
That's where they want to be.
Put them in a place where there's a windbreak. They can handle a tremendous amount of cold as long as they're not in the wind. And but have your cows in condition going into winter. And have you noticed the corn stalks are lasting a lot longer now? Used to be when we first started farming, you put cows out there, you had to move them every 20 days. You had to move. And now maybe it's because we have so much corn on the ground. So that has changed. A lot more roughage out there. So.
Well, I know that often on times in the winter, a lot of businesses, they have workshops. And you can participate in going to the county extension informational thing on this and that and the other. And we've done that for years. I go to some of the major shows that are put on, and I learn from some of the best minds, like the weather guy. He predicted that we were going to have a really wet spring. He said, get all of your corn planted by the middle of April because you won't get the rest of it in until the end of May, and I'll be darned if he wasn't right where I live.
You got your corn planted June 1st?
Yeah, I don't know when the kids planted it. I think they went out there. They were doing something early. Unfortunately, folks, I do not get a ride in a tractor anymore. My kids don't let me do it. They think that auto steer button is too fun for them to push, and I will screw it up, and it probably is the truth. I'll probably screw it up. But anyway, if you go to some of these workshops, whether you're going to somebody that's talking about estate planning, whether you're going to somebody that's talking about soil fertility, whether you're going to some sort of a shop on the best way you can apply chemicals or herbicides to get a better yield. Go to the livestock seminars and go to the livestock shows. Go to those things over the winter. Schedule those early in advance and go there with the intent to learn something. Take something away, and then my advice is to put it into practice. Because and for those folks out there that bought a farm, I remember back in the day when I was young and I was getting my continuing education. This one guy got up and talked about if you buy a farm and if you don't do any improvements within the first 2 years, you'll probably never make any improvements the rest of your life on that farm. So if you just buy a farm and there's something that you want to change, get after it and get it done, because the more you get used to it, and the next thing you know, 10 years later, 20 years later, nothing has changed. So
That's good advice.
Take that into consideration, whether it's the old fence post that needs to be replaced, or a guy was farming around a tree for 25 years, and it started out as a little tree, and he thought he'd go out there and get it the next year, and he didn't, and he waited the next year, and now it's as big as, a house, and he's still farming around that tree. But anyway, some helpful thoughts, but more importantly, providing you with some information that you can use in your farming or ranching operation. If you like this podcast, as always, please share it, like it, tell your friends. So we want to thank you very much for gearing up with Big Iron.